We've started. Thank you for coming to the Tucson Herp Society's first meeting of the year. It's great to see you all. So my name is Robert. I am the president again. It's a pleasure to be here. This is Tucson Herp Society. This is our mission statement. Before we continue, I'd like to remember Roger Rep, who passed away in November. Roger was a very good friend to many of us and a very important member of the THS for a number of years. I'd just like to read a little bit about Roger from his obituary. He was born in 1954, and he passed away on November 24th, 2025. He joins his son, Tim, his parents, Ruth and Frank, his two brothers, Robert and Ronald, and many other loved ones, survived by his wife, Diana, sister, Julie, brother, Dan, and many nieces, nephews, and cousins. He was grateful for his family and thankful for all the memories and moments shared with them. He was born in Illinois, where he earned his journeyman certification as a tool and die maker. He worked in Illinois, Florida, Washington, and Arizona, eventually retiring from his position as the instrument shop supervisor for the National Optical Astronomy Observatory, Tucson, Arizona. Roger had a lightness about him and, yes, sometimes a prickly side, but he loved to laugh and tell jokes and stories. He dearly loved the natural world and often thanked God for this beautiful area we live in. He loved writing about the joy of herping and sharing about the beauty of the natural world. He authored or co-authored over 20 peer-reviewed papers and published over 100 herp-related articles in various Herp Society newsletters. Celebrations of Roger's life will be held tentatively in spring of 2026 in Tucson, Arizona, and Illinois. In lieu of flowers, please consider making a donation to your local community food bank and enjoying a walk in the beautiful world in which we live. Roger, about to French kiss a Gila monster and fondling a rich-nosed rattlesnake. So we here in Tucson are in the Sonoran Desert, the traditional homeland of the Tohono O'odham and many indigenous groups. I work at the Desert Lab on Tumamak Hill, which is a transliteration of Chema Makdoag, Hill of the Horned Lizard. And the west face of Push Peak is Baba Doag, or Toad Mountain. This month, not this month, but the most current issue of Sonoran Herpetologist has this wonderful photo by Eric Anderson, who was with Roger when he took this photograph. This month, this new paper came out on the phylogeny of rich-nosed rattlesnakes. So check it out. If you have a hard time downloading it, let me know and I can get you a copy. I didn't know I thought I hit this, but this is some of last year's outreach presentations. That many people roughly were reached. We have a number of events this year coming up. The first Congress of the Herp Association of Sonora. At least Dale will be going. So if you want to join in a group and represent the THS, let us know.
Okay. ¿A
Hermosillo, yeah, the capital of Sonora. We have the 50th anniversary meeting of the International Herpetological Symposium in Portal. We plan on sponsoring 3 more prizes for the Southern Arizona Research, Science, and Engineering Fair. And of course, there's the annual Southwest Partners in Amphibian and Reptile Conservation meeting in St. George, Utah. This February, next month, Ryan will be having a THS table at the Desert Tortoise Council Symposium in Las Vegas. And volunteers are needed for the 27th of April to the 17th of May for some restorations. If you need any more information about that, contact Becca Kozad or scan that code with your phone. So these are two books that are being produced as companions to this book, The Snakes of Arizona. I've brought it out so that at some point, if you want to look at what an incredible book this is, it gives you an idea of what these other books will be like. They're currently soliciting photographs or observations for these upcoming books. If you have them, you can visit that website. Screen there. And this is the 2026 officers. So myself, Karen Watson as secretary, Patrick Brown as vice president, and Ryan Perry is our new treasurer. And we thank Maggie for pretty much 10 years of service as our treasurer. We have two new directors on the board, Jill Johnson on the left with Patrick, and Michael Ruff, who is currently flying back to Tucson from Peru. So maybe he'll talk to us about what he saw there. This is a tentative arrangement of speakers that we have for this year. If you or someone you know would like to speak, please get in touch with me. Our presentations are recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel. So if you miss a meeting or want to revisit one, you can go to our YouTube channel. So I'm going to introduce tonight's speakers. The Tucson Mountains form a boundary to the city, a gateway to the Sonoran Desert, a great place to meet our local herpetofauna. They are currently protected by a county park and a portion of Saguaro National Park, but still face threats to their biodiversity. Julia Fonseca is a hydrologist who has worked on land and water issues in southern Arizona since 1986. She retired as an environmental planning manager with Pima County Conservation Lands and Resources. Dale is a retired wildlife biologist conservationist. He has worked for a variety of environmental groups and continues to study reptiles of the Sonoran Desert and Sky Islands region. He is currently conservation chair at THS. Jessica Moreno is a wildlife biologist with the Coalition for Sonoran Desert Protection, with almost 20 years of experience in road ecology and wildlife corridor conservation in the Sonoran Desert and Madrean Sky Islands. Let's welcome them. Thank you.
It's good to be here, everyone. Nice to see you all. I'm Julia Fonseca, formerly of Pima County. I worked for many years on something called the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan. The biological goal of that plan is really to protect all the species and to restore some of the connectivity across this landscape. But when we're talking about Tucson Mountains, that's a pretty difficult proposition given all of the development that we have in the urban area, and the fact that there's a moat in the form of the Central Arizona Project now on the west side. But tonight we're going to hear about two projects, one from Jessica and one from Dale, that try to address some of the problems of the Tucson Mountains area. And my job here is going to be to set the stage then for how this area was protected and the relationship of the wildlife habitat conservation to the actual mining that occurred there, mineral withdrawals occurred in the past. So on this map, there's a red outline, and that red outline is the Tucson Mountains wildlife area. How many people have heard about that? Maybe because of hunting regulations. We think of it a lot in terms of the hunt regulations these days. It's a state designation, and it's been in existence for quite some time. So you'll know a little bit more about it later. But let's start with 1910. This map comes from a document that was just about the general character of Pima County in 1910. And it shows the mining districts. And most of the book is about mining, really, because this was big mining country. And it wasn't so much that in the Tucson Mountains, which is, let's see, number 9 here. It wasn't so much that there were a lot of working mines there. There were very few mines, but there was a lot of prospecting. Because under the 1872 Mining Act, basically young men would go out, dig pits, and try to find valuable mineral discoveries. If they could prove that they found a valuable mineral discovery, then that proven claim would be an asset that could be sold for money. So people were making their money that way, not so much by mining. But it left a lot of scars. It left soil piles, it left a lot of holes. Some of these holes became great bat habitat, but others continued to kill wildlife in some substantive numbers in Tucson Mountains. The other thing that was going on was homesteading. The Bowen house is shown here. A lot of people were homesteading, bringing their livestock, not only cows, but burros, goats, crawling the hills, a lot of wood cutting because people used firewood, a lot of road building. So these were things of concern to people who lived in the city, which wasn't very far away, right? Because the axis of the Santa Cruz River was the origin of where people were living. So they got pretty interested in conservation. And one of the interesting things about this story is this guy. This is Aldo Leopold. He has a role in this story. Some of you may know his work from the San County Almanac or the Land Ethic quote, which is shown here. But he actually he was part of the Forest Service at the time. And the Forest Service paid him to go out to communities and organize people around wildlife protection. He organized things called game protective associations, and he used this newspaper too to communicate with all these people in the Southwest about the need for game laws, because the Tucson Mountains, like many places, is getting hunted out. All the deer, the bighorn sheep were gone, etc. So game protective associations, these were some of the ideas behind it to get the states to adopt game laws. One of the big roles. So federal guy out there as a community organizer, organizing people to ask for state game. And this is his son, Sergeant. He had some interesting ideas about predators. But he came to Tucson in 1916, and he spoke, and that was the origin of something called the Tucson Game Protective Association that worked as a non-governmental organization for the next 12 years to get protection for the Tucson Mountain wildlife. And they basically wanted a game refuge. So by about 1928, the person who was the president of the Game Protective Association of Tucson was this guy, C.D. Brown. He's considered the father of Tucson Mountain Park, but he was the chairman of the organization back then, a very good advocate for the game refuge. So the first thing that they got actually was a mineral withdrawal. It's called a recreational withdrawal in this, but what it did is it closed 30,000 acres to new mineral entry, so that they wouldn't keep prospecting fell out of place. It also established the purpose, which was for recreation, but then the Board of Supervisors adopted a statement, a resolution creating a county park. The county park purposes are recreation and wildlife. And so this is the boundary of on the right-hand side, is the boundary of the 30,000 acres. So it includes the heart of Tucson Mountain Park, as well as what we now consider the western unit of Saguaro National Park. That's the boundaries of 1938, but this is actually the withdrawal from the boundary. The game refuge was the next objective, so that wasn't enough. They didn't want just a mineral withdrawal, they wanted to get the game refuge established, and that was achieved in 1931. it was just one of many game refuges that the state, having just adopted wildlife laws, created. And the boundaries are now, the wildlife area boundaries are much bigger. They include quite a bit of private land as well, as well as the federal land. The county went ahead and the county leased all of this land from the federal government initially, and then acquired it bit by bit over the succeeding. So of course they put up their signs, Tucson Mountain Park, State Game Refuge sign. And they started to do some stuff for wildlife. So on the left-hand side, we see a game survey map. So they surveyed this area for deer, bighorn sheep. And they didn't find any bighorn sheep in 1931, and only 25 deer in that entire 30,000 acres. They also worked to fence the area with livestock. And they built a lot of water features, which you can still see today if you've been out there. These were not recreational features. The idea was to make the availability of water during drought greater to support especially deer population. So not much about herps at this point, right? Then in 1959, a portion of the federal land that the county had not yet purchased was opened back to mineral entry, 7,000 acres. And the people of Tucson were pretty concerned about this renewed effort. It was Banner Mining Company, a legitimate, larger mining company with just a couple of guys prospecting, wanted to have at it out there, I guess. And ultimately what happened was people convinced the Udalls to go to bat. Stuart Udall was the head of the Secretary of the Interior at the time. Mo Udall was congressman. They convinced President Kennedy to use the Antiquities Act. One of the reasons why a lot of monuments get created today is it's one of the few tools that we have to withdraw federal lands from future mining in a permanent way. Most mineral withdrawals have a term. But under the Antiquities Act, it's a more or less permanent thing. So after that, there were so I should say this is what transferred the northern half of Tucson Mountain Park to the National Park Service. This was the strategy then to secure that 7,000 acres. From future mining. And so now we see the boundaries here of the original, and in black is the original boundaries in 1929. The purple is the new unit of Saguaro National Park. The pink is the county park. And then the expansions that have occurred since then on those boundaries. All of this mainly under the Sonoran Desert. And some of this actually, and I think Tom Guimont is here. He played a role in securing some of this land over here. He and other neighbors in the Sweetwater Preserve area. Recognition to them, the role they played. But still doesn't address the legacy that mining has left there. So that is, I turn it over to Dale.
Thank you, Julia. Oh, yeah. Now we talk about some verbs. That's one now. Yeah, so Sonoran Desert tortoises are long-lived animals, as I'm sure you're aware, and they take roughly 20 years to reach sexual maturity. And one of the implications of that is that they have relatively low reproductive output. So population levels are more sensitive to adult mortality than they are to juvenile recruitment. Individuals can live a long time, close to a century. So they don't have to have very many young to get replacement. But if you lose an adult, then you have a dent in the population. Now, most of the Tucson Mountains is desert tortoise habitat. Many people, herpetologists in Tucson area, have studied tortoises in the Tucson Mountains. I've got at least a few of them here. Betsy Bird doing a study out there. And then Chuck Lowe was working there, Peter Holm, Aaron Zylstra more recently. Tucson Mountains are also very close to our growing city, right there on the horizon, which brings a variety of pressures on tortoises. Now, Pima County has been monitoring the tortoise populations in Tucson Mountain Park for about 8 or 9 years now. They've done 3 rounds of monitoring, and they've got over 100 marked individuals in Tucson Mountain Park. And from their data, it seems like the population is stable for the moment. But if you're out hiking in the Tucson Mountains and you find a tortoise that's got a license plate, a little white thing on its butt with a number on it, it's probably a Pima County marked animal. Now, there are a number of threats to persistence of tortoise populations. This is kind of like the high-level summary of 2021 species status assessment by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but a few of them: habitat conversion to something that's not habitat. It's part of what I'll be addressing here. Habitat fragmentation by linear structures, Jessica is going to address in a few minutes. And then, human tortoise interaction, which covers a variety of things. But the net effect, something that Aaron Zylstra showed, looking at many of the populations that have been monitored across the state, there is a clear correlation where there's lower persistence of adults in populations that are closer to urban areas. People are bad for horses. Thank you. So this is also from that species status assessment. And one of those habitat conversions, large-scale commercial mines affect tortoises primarily through loss of habitat. Small vertical shafts and pits associated with old prospects and test pits are numerous and widespread across public lands. And they noted that there were thousands of those across tortoise range in the U.S. These vertical features, if left open and accessible, are likely to injure and kill more Sonoran Desert tortoises over time and space than commercial operations. So, the big, ugly mines, big open pits that we see, there's essentially zero habitat for anything there. But these small features are at least as yet. There are not thousands of them in the Tucson Mountains, but they exist. In Tucson Mountain Park, there has been an inventory, and within there are roughly 60 features shown here. Doesn't look like quite that many of them are close together. Pile up on the map. Of those, 42 are vertical shafts that are less than 20 feet deep. So this is an opportunity. I should also say that north of there, Saguaro National Park has solved this problem. Or, last spring, I called Don Swan saying, I'm retired, I have some energy, have some time, I want to build some mines in the Tucson Mountains. And he said, well, the good news is Saguaro National Park is done. They closed, filled, or gated about 170 features in two sides of the park, which is pretty damn amazing. I'm impressed. But Tucson Mountain Park, we're just starting. So this is what one of these prospect pits looks like. You know, it doesn't look like much. This is actually not in Tucson Mountain Park. This is on county lines down by Arapaco. You know, the real hole down there is maybe 2 feet deep. You could walk right past it and not think much about it. And if you fell in, you might sprain your ankle and climb back out. But if you look close, down there, there's a live tortoise at the bottom of that hole. That county staff found and pulled it out. But it doesn't take much to trap tortoise, especially little tortoise. This is a much bigger feature. So, you know, this is 12, 15 feet deep. That could trap a human. Maybe if you're, you know, agile and you know, pretty good shape, the person could climb up. But many forms of wildlife could not. In fact, look at the bottom of that hole. Look at the bobcat looking back up. So this was on Saguaro National Park, and what a story that I got, you know, it was emaciated but still very much alive. And they threw some logs in. It managed to climb out and wobble away. And then they filled the hole. So this is what we're up against. These things have been killing wildlife for a century or more. And if we don't do something about them, they will continue killing for millennia. You know, it's just, they just keep killing. So, to clarify, I'm really just focused on vertical features. There are also these horizontal features, commonly called adits, that in some cases they're just, you know, little dents in a hillside. Sometimes they go quite a ways back. But those can actually be wildlife habitat. Bats may use them, you know, mountain lion, bear, javelina, rattlesnakes. Good place to find rattlesnakes if you don't mind crawling in next one. So not a problem from my perspective. Maybe a problem for human safety, in which case they need gates to keep people out, but bats can still walk through. Some of these features are pretty inconspicuous. You can walk right past them and not notice. I took this photo from a trail in Tucson Mountain Park. You know, it's a house on hillside. And it's got a little bit of fencing up there at the top. You get up there at the fence, and you're like, oh, you know, that doesn't look like that much. So you lean over the fence and look down. That's about 4 feet by 6 feet by 14 feet. You know, that's kind of a scary hole. So we've started, we as an herbicide started a project to fill in as many of these as we can. So the first one we started on, again, it's not that big a hole. It's, you know, the vertical sided part of it is about 2.5 feet. This is that same hole a couple of hours later, thanks to, you know, a few folks who are here tonight. We just took soil that the miners excavated out of the hole and put it back. We don't have to fill it completely, just enough, with enough of a ramp so that the tortoise can walk out. Happens to roll in. I should also mention in this photo, we are fortunate in having good allies with Pima County. So the guy standing in the center of the hole, Brian Powell, was a leader in Pima County Natural Resources, who did the inventory of the mines out there and it's really been wanting to close these things for a long time. So he was essential in getting the county on board to do this. He has now left the county to do other things, and guy standing off on the right, Noah DeFino, and Amanda Aguilar, sidekick are my points of contact in making this happen on the county side. So we are going out at least once a month. So every second Saturday through April, we'll probably take a break for the hot season, start again in the fall. But we'll also have a few occasional weekday outings. So if you're interested in being part of this, if gym membership is too expensive, you're tired of CrossFit, it doesn't give you the right workout, come out and shovel some rocks. It's good fun. Good. I wouldn't say clean fun. It's pretty dirty fun, but it's good fun. So I will have a sign-up list if you want to join us at the end. But it'd be great to see you out there. So I will pass this over to Jessica to talk about linear features and connectivity.
I mean, I could keep going on about mine, but I'm gonna talk to you later about that.
Okay.
Because my husband at Game and Fish does that for Game and Fish. I'm Jessica Moreno. It's really interesting to stand up here and recognize so many faces. I'm happy to be here when Dale invited me to come up and talk for a minute about this. What he told me was we need to share some positive stories, some wins, especially I think this year we need some, and we've got them. So let's talk about them and celebrate that. I work for the Coalition for Sonoran Desert Protection, which I hope you have heard of us before. And we're also very connected with the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan, which basically is responsible for starting our organization, or vice versa. Kind of came about the same time, same place, same reason.
The THS is a member of the
And yes, and the Tucson Herpetofauna Society is a member group of the coalition. We are a true coalition. There's now, Kate will have to remind me. 28 member groups. And here with me too, I do have Kate. Kate, I heard your voice, now I can't see you. There you are. Kate, our executive director, and over here in the corner is Nick too, who's recently joined us to help with policy work. So you can pick their brains later too. Work that I do specifically is really focused on wildlife linkages and protecting wildlife corridors.
No, you saying your website's weird. It's telling me that I tried to do the match list, and
which is essentially right in
option.
the center, near center
I'm at the
of
call
your
it.
100-mile circle.
When I tried to do the wait
talk
list, it
about
said
a
there
lot
was
with
one
herps
like
here.
that. Ready.
And just like that, we also have a circle
when I
with
tried to
donut
book it,
of corridors that are moving around the city
Show
of
me as an
Tucson,
option.
where animals are going between mountain ranges and for habitat areas. They're using riparian areas and washes and other features
I always call
to move around as they need to find food, to find mates.
It tells me that,
all
but
the
it's
things
something
we all
about
freedom to roam and migrate. What I'm going to talk about today, though, is this star way up at the top. This is in Moreno. So at the northern end of the Tucson Mountains, you can see here. Well, I do have a here's our Tucson Mountains that we've been talking about this whole time. And the Tucson Mountains are incredibly isolated. We have the Cap Canal on this side. We have I-10 on this side, and we have approaching development on all sides. And then we have some threats like the proposed Interstate 11, things like that to deal with, on top of the usual issues and threats that we have to handle. So this is a pretty critical wildlife linkages. It's actually one of the top, I should say top, is one of the most critically threatened wildlife corridors in Arizona at the moment.
If that helps anything.
And if you look at the northern portion of the Tucson Mountains, so very northern
I
end
don't
of
think it
it
has any more space.
here, this is El Rio Preserve. This is our Santa Cruz River.
Yeah.
Here's I-10. There are actually quite a
That
few
too.
barriers for animals to navigate if they're gonna get between the Tucson Mountains and the Tortoises,
Yeah, right.
which is a really important connection to
Right,
make.
yeah.
If we can have animals continue to
Well, compared to
their
a
genetic
two-bedroom bus system.
information
Yeah.
change,
Now I lost
disperse
my thing.
across mountain ranges between the Tortoises and the Tucsons, we potentially can connect to the Catalina Mountains as well, because we have that very successful wildlife bridge in Oracle. I could give a whole other talk about that and tortoises, because tortoises use that crossing. It's really cool. Tortoise was the first animal to use that crossing, actually, during construction, so I'm not gonna wait. But here in Moreno, the issue is that not only do they have to navigate, and tortoises and deer and everything in between have to navigate the interstate, they also have to navigate the frontage roads, both of them, the railroad track, fencing, and the levee that keeps flooding from coming out of the Santa Cruz River, right? That's a very steep wall. So that's a lot, and they're all right next to each other. The only safe passage across I-10 currently at this location is this underpass here. It's an abandoned underpass. It used to be a railroad. It's not used anymore, and it's just left. So that's what we got. And way back in the day, in the early days of the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan, we knew we had to connect this linkage somehow, and our artist rendering had a bridge that went over the whole shebang like this. And that's a solution that we're still looking at, building that bridge. Currently, we are doing a whole bunch of research to see what animals are moving through this area now, what is using it now. So we have prior data as well as post data. And so we started a project back, I think we actually started putting cameras out in 2015. And that project has expanded, and now we've developed it into this project looking at the linkage from Tucson Mountains and Picture Rocks area all the way to the Tortoise Mountain linkage that we want to connect.
Oh.
Divided it up into 10, this is 6, but this is 10 study areas with 4 cameras in each one, so we can compare them on both sides of the highway. And we're seeing some really interesting patterns already. We're seeing a lot more deer movement over here than we are on that side of the highway. We also discovered kit foxes. And kit foxes are super important for tortoises because they help, they're engineers. They build a lot of burrows that later other animals will use. So that is a really cool point to have there. So this project is currently looking at species richness and what we have going on in the whole area and how wildlife are moving back and forth across this linkage. We also have a wildlife road watch project, and our desert roadies are going out and collecting roadkill information. This cat was back in 2007 on Picture Rocks Road. Because roads, and you can imagine also with our herps, it's a huge problem. More than we probably can measure, actually. We're undercounting most of the time. So I am very interested in collecting roadkill data that you might have if you're doing studies or you're just going out and herping for fun at night, road cruising. We have 2 projects on iNaturalist.org. One is called Safe Passages for Wildlife. And the other one is Sonoran Desert Roadkill, which Adam Springer at Saguaro National Park and I put together. And both of those are collecting roadkill points. Live sightings and dead sightings, everything on the road. You want to see it. And it's important because a lot of times when we do this kind of work, and you hear about wildlife crossings, the big focus is always on like the elk, deer, the big charismatic large mammal. But the reality is that the little animals, even the pack rats, can tell you where that corridor exists and where things are trying to cross and unable to cross. They tell a very important story that's part of the big picture. And I will tell you that desert tortoises are one of the species that I make sure are always included when we're considering engineering of wildlife crossing structures. Because if you can get a deer across and you can get a tortoise across, everything will go. So that's kind of the strategy there. This conservation effort is so big. It almost seems overwhelming sometimes when you look at it, right? There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. We got to fund it, not just the research, but a crossing structure. We're talking millions. We were working at removing fence that doesn't need to be there anymore with the desert fence busters, getting that barbed wire out there, filling in pipes and holes. We're working on riparian restoration. There's policy work to do. There's community outreach to do. We got to oppose the new threats that show up, protect the monument, make sure the freeway doesn't show up on our doorstep. And then we have efforts to expand protection through Pima County and other ways. So all of these things are happening at once. And one of the great things about being a coalition is that we're all able to put our efforts together towards one goal and get them all done. We don't have to do everything by ourselves. We're doing it as a team. And it's really, really, really exciting. There is a vote coming up soon through Pima County for the RTA next. And we encourage you to vote yes, specifically because it has $50 million for wildlife crossing structures. And that is a big deal. That will help a lot. So that's one mechanism available to us to fund some of these projects. The big win I want to talk to you about today, mostly though, is this really exciting piece of that puzzle that we plopped into place. So I was talking about the levee, this really steep soil cement levee along the Santa Cruz River is a huge barrier. Things just aren't going to go up that. Even if they want to, they're not going to use the energy to go up that, and there's not much incentive to. Working with Pima County, we actually designed something that we're calling a wildlife ramp. This hasn't been built, to my knowledge, anywhere else. It is a new thing. What it does is it still maintains the integrity of the levee. It's still doing the job of controlling floodwaters, but it's also providing a ramp for animals to come in and out of the river system. So now this corridor is open. It's at a particular slope. There's like a lot of pieces to this puzzle. And currently it's fenced with wildlife fence because we don't want to open it up into the freeway when there's nothing there yet. So the gate's closed at the moment. We have there's some little deer pictures a little bit. We have a little jump out right here so that animals can come into it, but can't go out. So animals currently coming through from the Tortoises Mountains, across the freeway underneath our underpass, potentially could come down through here, and it is open going west. This is the artistic rendering. This is under construction. This is the actual finished product before they started planting. It looks a lot like the rendering. We put wildlife cameras under here and over here and at the jump out. And we also have wildlife cameras in the underpass. So you gotta get a sense of what's in the area and what's using it now, even though it's not fully functional. But this was really exciting. It's new engineering. It considers reptiles. They did a whole relocation project. Were any of you involved with that project, the U of A Dale was. Yeah, relocation project for all the herps before the construction started. And these piles here that look like bonfire things, this is a windrow. This is a brush pile intended specifically for pack rats and herps and lizards and whiptails, to provide shelter and cover for them as they're coming across this big open area. So that continues throughout here. There's some other little smaller ones. This is new science in a way. This is like tip of the ice. This is like we're all the way out there doing the newest, shiniest thing. And that's pretty exciting too. See that Pima County is willing to fund. This was Pima County floodplain control.
You can listen. Okay, 5 seconds.
What's there? The bridge is not there yet, but the ramp's red. And that's a really heartwarming for me personally, because that tells you that somebody believes there will be a bridge there. Here's a view from the other side. They did some tree planting, and we occasionally give tours out there for folks who want to go see it in person. It's actually quite amazing in person. And now with the vegetation and the rain we've been getting, it looks really nice too. So
You guys are too much.
kind of made this is a horrible, horrible Photoshop, but I wanted to like share the vision of what we were thinking about. That one day we could have this wildlife crossing structure that spans the whole highway. A ramp that goes into the river and truly connect the Tortolita and the Tucson Mountains to give Tucson Mountains a real lifeline. Because it needs it. It won't persist. The biodiversity will not persist unless it has connections to the mountain ranges around. And this is one of the critical points that currently is pretty much broken. You know, tortoises are not moving. We don't even have deer moving across. So that's the vision. And if any of you have projects that you know of happening in this area, or even in Avra Valley and other sides of the Tucson Mountains, there's a group of us that formed a working group. We're the Avra Valley Wildlife Research Group, and we're trying to pull together a lot of people who are doing work in this area. We don't have any herpetologists. So we want to know what you're up to. We want to know what's going on out here. We want to know what's important and what pieces we're missing. So I'd love to pick your brain about that stuff if you know of any of that going on here.
So consider yourself invited, right?
You're invited. Yeah, and roadkill surveys too, if you want to come out and volunteer. Our roadkill survey season starts in April and ends in November. Folks go out twice a month, and it's pretty flexible on your own schedule kind of thing. You're out there anyway, guys. You're doing it anyway. I just need to tell you exactly where I need to know where stuff is. So we got that going on. I really encourage you to sign up and volunteer for that. Big team effort, even for this little piece of the project.
Wow.
Pima County is a huge part of it, of course. But we have town of Moreno, a whole bunch of our member groups, interns and volunteers out there checking cameras, collecting roadkill data, which is not everyone's cup of tea. But we're doing it for the animals.
Aw.
We have to include some herps pictures in there. And I would love to someday also talk to you more about the success we had at the first bridge, Oracle Road. That bridge, if you haven't visited, you should do a tour there.
Sure.
Because the wildlife bridge up by Catalina State Park on Oracle Road, we are now with this project where we were with that one 20 years ago. And so we know the path that we need to get there. And tortoises were kind of the success story of that entire project from beginning to end also. I mean, pygmy owl was sort of like the match, but tortoises have been carrying it forward. The wildlife crossing there, the first animal to use it was a tortoise during construction. It stopped construction, let him through. And then not too long ago, a couple years ago, we got one on the wildlife bridge as we were doing some restoration work up there. We were able to point to it. So that was really great. It's also a lot of fun to follow them around because Game and Fish did a little study where they put some backpacks on them when they were tracking where the tortoises were, and we have a map overlaying all of their home ranges to see if they were crossing the road and how. Lots of fun stories. And we want to do that here. So
well, thanks so much. Yeah, that's great. I have a question about
We can entertain questions for
for all of us,
for all of us.
The THS is also part of TBOS, which is the Tucson's Birthplace Open Space Coalition.
Yeah.
And there have been some ideas thrown around about a possible wildlife crossing of some sort because it's so close to the Tucson Mountains. The river is so close to the Tucson Mountains. How do you determine whether a place is suitable for a wildlife crossing of any sort?
honestly, this is not very scientific.
Yeah.
Just put one there.
Yeah.
And please use it. Well, one of the things that's really exciting that came out of this project, the wildlife grant project, is that Pima County is putting together a little working group now to figure out where more of these could go. So we're seeing how this is working, and we're going to think about where else can we connect river systems with habitat and build some more ramps for wildlife. And wildlife crossing structures over roads as well. Anytime you're trying to connect two pieces of open space, you put a crossing. We use roadkill data to find hotspots where animals are trying and failing. So those hotspots, that's important data. And then we use other data like habitat modeling just to see, where things are and where they need to, and where we want to open up habitat. Because if you can stitch that road shut with a bridge, you can reconnect hundreds of acres sometimes. The important factor though also is to remember the fencing, because animals don't read wildlife crossing signs, unfortunately. Neither do people apparently, but we use fencing to funnel them just like we do when you're doing a pit trap. Funnel the animals to the crossing structure, and studies have shown that works like 100%. Works great. That's how we do it.
Cool. Awesome. And I think I was oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Finished? Okay. I don't have a question. Well, actually, I have one small question. If anybody knows what the population of spotted skunks is in the Tucson Mountains? And North
was the question?
Spotted skunk.
Oh.
I just caught one on a camera trap.
Yeah,
I just caught one on a camera trap.
it's
In my
very,
backyard.
it's very low.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really great when you catch one over there.
Yeah, well, that was pretty exciting because I hadn't seen any for
Did a skunk?
my backyard. There it was, and long, within the last 2 weeks, and also a mountain lion. So that's pretty exciting.
On our wildlife camera study, we very rarely see spotted skunks. We very rarely see skunks, to be honest. It's something we're kind of concerned about.
But the big point I'd like to make that people are oftentimes forgetting about is that if that wildlife corridor goes through Aber Valley, the trucking corridor, there's a lot of economic pressure to do it. Actually, on a map, it really looks logical. Makes perfect sense to bypass Tucson, get around that mountain range and get all the trucks going through Aber Valley. It would be absolutely devastating for the sound environment, not only of our wildlife, but for our attractions, many of the most important desert attractions that Tucson offers at the tourism department happen on the west side of the Tucson Mountains. And the way sound travels through desert environments it would
I don't love
impact
it,
for
but-
miles
Love it.
the
Love
whole
it.
scenario, no matter how many, and this is kind of scary because somebody, lots of money might say, oh yeah, or even the state might say, okay, we're gonna put in all of these wildlife crossings for you, but you need to agree, or we also will plan to put Interstate 11 through Apple Valley. Unfortunately, all of the sound environment is going to be the same. I mean, in terms of the impact on everything that we know and love. That, I think, is something we always have to keep in mind.
And if folks want to learn more about this issue, the proposed I-11, our website has a really, really great landing page that brings everything together right there, including especially what you can do next. And the comment period's coming up at the end of the thing. So we're going to be ramping up efforts against that. And then to your point about like the mitigation money that they talk about, give us this, we'll give you that. That's true, but they could also give us mitigation money for co-locating it along I-10. So.
Well, and I think the economic studies show it's a lot cheaper to run it to
Yeah.
widen and improve Interstate 10. And develop a whole new trucking corridor on the other side. And I know it can be really bad when you're in traffic on Interstate 10 trying to navigate through Tucson. It's pretty congested.
Light Rick. I mean, like,
Another question?
Not just, light rail.
I real, okay.
So have you guys used data from natural histories and specimens in your work?
no, not yet. Not specifically for this project, but I'd be interested. I mean, this kind of the camera project that we started got sparked because 2 desert bighorn sheep showed up in Tucson Mountains, bopping around. And people got all excited about connecting bighorn sheep populations. But I'm sure that would be interesting now if there's maybe even to compare.
Do the bridges, I'm kind of interested in more about it, seem to promote predator prey interactions?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question because somebody always asks that question.
What was the question?
Actually, so most studies have shown that that doesn't really occur. I'm not going to say it doesn't because I'm a scientist. Absolutes don't exist, but I mean, it could happen. However, you're looking at a very narrow area, relatively speaking, that is not comfortable for any animal crossing it for the most part. They're trying to get through there as fast as they can. They're hyper aware. They're looking around. So it's not like the ideal place to sit and just like pick off deer or something. The only exception to that is at the Oracle Road Wildlife Overpass, not the underpass, but the overpass. We did have some hawks sitting up on the telephone poles that were just like, scouting it out quite a bit. But we hope we've fixed some of that problem with the revegetation work that we've done, putting in. We're working on prickly pear corridors and cover for all those little animals. So that's fun. And yeah, I haven't experienced it. We haven't seen it on the cameras. The predators and prey both cross at different times. But they could. I mean, it could happen. I just haven't seen it happen. And I think one of the big things with that is like mountain lions and bobcats and coyotes, they know where the food is. They don't need a drive through.
Question, thank you.
Yeah, I just also wanted to know, just another cool fact about them is that they're also starting to see generational knowledge of the usage of them being passed down, right? So a doe will show its offspring how to cross, and the next year or in a couple years, right, that same offspring from that original doe now showing its offspring how to get across, right? So that generational knowledge of the usage of how to get across is now being passed down through iterations of that species. So that's pretty cool too.
Do you know of any groups in Pinal County that's trying to create land bridges for the 77? I used to live in Salmonwell, so driving, I used to go under the overpass all the time. But along 77, once you get past that, and you get through the corner where you turn off to go to Florence, I've seen bobcats, deers, javelina, everything along roadkill trying to get across that 77. Do you have any groups are looking at doing land bridges on that side?
I'm not aware of in that area specifically. Arizona Game and Fish kind of looks at it at a statewide level, but their big concern, not concern. Funding follows liability. So where there's accidents and human fatalities, human injuries, from hitting big things like deer, elk, those tend to get the priority for the funding of those kinds of crossing structures. Pima County has been pretty unique, actually, internationally, in terms of thinking ahead about what the biodiversity, what the conservation plan needs to connect things and prioritize it that way. And having the RTA money that we had last time to build those structures really helped with that, because we didn't have to wait for ADOT to say, well, only if someone gets killed on that road, you know, we don't want to wait for that.
I lost 2 cars to deer on that road.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yell about it because maybe they'll do something.
I don't live out there. I don't live in Seminole anymore, but when I did, you know, I graduated from Seminole, so we've traveled that road my whole life basically, and I'm 56 now. So,
There's a pretty big group of people, or at least were organized around open space issues in Pinal County. So that might be a place to kind of get them thinking about when they go for a bond or some mechanism to acquire land, maybe they should be thinking about wildlife.
I mean, thankfully, it's a fairly new idea that's taking off, and it's becoming more and more common. More people are seeing them, more people are talking about them. We have the really famous one in LA that's made the news. We're starting to make documentaries about them and stuff. So it's the kind of thing you can bring up in a local meeting and say, hey, why aren't we focused on this? And I think that is where we have the most power to make a lot of change too, is in those local places when you're like, this is my backyard, this is my home. That's what I'm seeing. Cars right here is where the bridge goes. Because that knowledge you guys have is important.
Is there any data showing that predators might be utilizing these corridors for meals? Quick meals?
I haven't seen any of that.
Yeah.
We haven't. I've seen one kill near a wildlife crossing structure, and I actually think it was roadkill that got scavenged. Yeah, like I was saying earlier, most predators, most prey in that situation are super hyper vigilant, and they're not gonna get caught off guard, and they're also moving through really quickly because it's unfamiliar and it's open. So we've got cameras on those bridges and underpasses, and so far we haven't seen any kind of predation going on. When we've added cover, then we see more little critters, more rodents and more herps.
Somebody.
I was going to ask about the mines. Are you only looking at vertical shafts and in the Tucson Mountains for your work? And have you expanded that to any other areas in the rest of the county?
So far, the Tucson Herp Society just focused on Tucson Mountain Park because that's enough to bite off. And we just started. So we've done 6.5 mines.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot.
The Coronado's doing some too.
But the,
Coronado National Forest.
There's a ton in the Tortoises.
yeah, there are a lot. And the county has inventoried their other conservation lands. And there are a lot of holes in it. So it's a huge problem. And some of them, yeah, volunteers with shovels are not going to get it. There's some really big ones that are going to, yeah, what Saguaro managed to do was they got some federal money specific to the project, and they hired a crew out of Idaho, I think, who were skilled at creating these closures. The helicopter steel into a site, weld up a big sort of, coarse level grate and then weld on diamond plate, a grid on top of that. So it's a fairly permanent closure. It's also very expensive. So yes, there's a lot more to be done. And if you've got ideas for how to get that done, I'm pretty happy.
Arizona Game and Fish has a contract with the BLM. BLM's hiring them to close a lot of these mines throughout Arizona, and they have some pretty interesting tactics too. They've been prefabricating the back gates in culverts, and then they just shove the culvert in the hole and fill in around it. They've also been using, there's this foam. So you break the bag, it foams up and turns into like cement, and then they put dirt over it. They've been doing that. And backhoes. By getting a backhoe into some of those places.
I think backhoe is a great idea. And I think foam is not such a great idea.
I know.
I don't know how that's gonna hold up.
Yeah.
But
So are you doing any, looking at what, if you find dead things in these pits that you're filling, are you looking
To the
like data on that?
That we can.
Yes. Bones and things or whatever?
Yeah, but it's a lot of work to get to the bottom of some of these holes.
Then you don't want to go to the bottom.
Some of them I don't want to go to the bottom of it. So yes, I mean, it's an interesting question. I am curious. I'm not curious enough.
Roadkill for the southern,
Yeah,
so part of it. I mean,
well,
you know they're pit traps, but
We know they're pitfall traps.
How
Yeah,
many?
yeah, at some point you just need to stop collecting data and just fix it. But yeah,
But while you're fixing it, more data, but anyhow.
Yeah, absolutely.
They need a volunteer house.
So
I bet.
if you want to come out and rappel down into some of these holes.
I think I would rather try to help recruit people from Rocks and Ropes to see if they would like to help with that. Right?
This whole concept of this construction, making a paper bank so things up and down, avoid that levee is really cool. I'm assuming that there's one on the concomitant bank so that you'd actually have not only an entrance but also an exit through that corridor, that riparian corridor.
Yeah, you would
proposing-
need. In this case, we have what's right adjacent to El Rio Preserve, which is kind of its own natural entry. But yes, and that's something that on a landscape scale, you would have to pay attention to. Getting into the corridor, the river itself is a corridor, but you want to make sure animals can get in. Yeah.
Is there passageway into the El Rio Preserve?
Yeah.
So wildlife can go west from the river.
Yeah. The levee mostly exists on the east side of the river for most of its stretch. That's a good point.
Are there any questions on chat?
Oh, yeah, check the chat. Yes, sir. Barely? That's on.
Okay.
I have several related questions to the corridor thingy. And I think you might have answered it to him. You have the ramp, and on the other side, there's no uppy thing?
Yeah, on the other side, it actually goes, so at this location,
There's no wall.
there's no wall on the other
Yeah,
side.
okay,
and
that is
it
one
is
question.
all real.
The other question I have is how do these animals find these corridors or even be able to find, I know you talked about using
Yeah.
fencing, but how, and he talked about what he talked about. But how do you guys decide where the best places that animals, I mean, you're talking about hundreds of acres and you're trying to narrow them down into these little thingies.
Yeah.
Social media.
Yeah. So that's kind of a multi-pronged thing that we do. So we're looking at habitat type and overlaying where all our different species are using habitat, where they're gonna overlay and use the same area. Through GIS mapping analysis. We also use data from collared animals like deer or bighorn sheep or mountain lions that have been moving through the area to see where they're going and where they're crossing. And then we also use roadkill data to figure out where those spots are that they're attempting to cross and failing to cross. And between all of that, we can map pretty accurately where animals move through the landscape, through areas that are a little bit more constrained. So, and these maps have held up because Paul Byers' map was from like 2006. That analysis was done, and that was incorporated into the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan, and it has held up. So, and then over time, of course, you know, that becomes the open habitat left. So they're kind of constrained to those places. But between listening to the animals and where they're moving, and looking at, you know, using fencing and other things, it works out pretty well. And the data is showing that it's working. You know, at the end of the game, what you want to see is that genetic population is doing well. You can see that.
Willem de Roos is curious, are people allowed to cross the river, or how do I use it to cross?
Oh yeah, good question. Are people allowed to use the wildlife crossings? So they're different everywhere. And there have been places like in Germany, they built one that had a bike route and an animal route. And they tried to separate them with trees or something. But for the most part, these are closed to the public. And the ones in our area, we don't, I don't think there's enforcement, but we ask people to leave them alone, because if you're present, the animals are not present, and we want the animals. For the most part, they're using them as we would expect at dawn and dusk, you know, because they're largely crepuscular, and then we have our nocturnal critters. But we see animals there during the day too, like tortoises. So we try to let people know it's really cool, but yeah, that's not your access to Catalina State Park. Thanks.
Dale, you got a volunteer. Yeah.
Any other questions online?
No.
Okay.
If you come up with some later, you know where to find it, I guess.
Yeah, so. Thanks for listening.
Before I forgot to advertise my new shirts.
New shirts.
That's beautiful.
So one of our members, Courtney Christie, drew this tortoise out that she found on one of her hikes, and I thought that would be a great shirt. And I think it is. So these are the first time that they're being made available. They're not even yet available online. So say you got it right here. So
How much are they?
how much are they? $30. And they come in light green and black. And what I like about it is it kind of looks like a little alien in a shell. And he's smiling. And as a matter of fact, Steven Spielberg apparently saw a Galapagos tortoise and modeled ET after it. So yeah. Yeah. So phone home and phone your credit card too. Right.
Robert, Courtney had a story
Oh, she did.
that goes with that.
I didn't hear it.
She was hiking in the Catalinas and came across a tortoise treading water
Oh.
in a pothole, you know, in stream,
Ah, okay.
and it was struggling to get out
Okay.
and had been in there for a while. It looked exhausted. She pulled it out
Uh-huh.
and it pulled in.
Mhm.
She sketched it. She just sat there with it for about an hour.
That's right. Okay. Yeah.
But eventually
I remember.
it stuck its head out and walked away. So that was the tortoise.
The DT owned Courtney.
No.
Now you know the story behind the shirt. Thanks again.
Any volunteers?
Claire Crow from online, but she.
Volunteer.
I had a question.
Camera's not structured.
Result of business.
So at the I'm from in California, across the 101. I live right here, and I live here in a wildlife place, or from here in a wildlife place. And it's really interesting to me, like seeing how something like this, you know, the fact goes, I feel like you have, especially like in general, one of these reservations. It's so expensive. We're gonna bring mountain lions in my neighborhood. Or this isn't taking forever. What is like? What if you just said it's just gonna take forever? That's my brother said. But anyways, it is really good to like learn about that and see how like success stories are working with that wildlife. That's really
Great conservation system that people have their like for themselves.
and I feel like people like also understanding that they're even like general stuff. Yes. Thank you so much for the presentation.
There's a really cool, YouTube video, it's like a 15-minute film about,
Yes,
yeah, look it up.
Is it on?
It's on YouTube and it's called.
How to find it.
P22.